Star Wars is a divisive property. For every original trilogy fan, there are a million Star Wars fans that think the newer films are so bad they're a travesty. But what if I told you our old pal Mark Hamill, the man who played Luke Skywalker, thought the original film was so bad it had to be a joke? Earlier today, Mark Hamill said just that. Let's look into it to see if it's world class or just plain old BS. But before we get into that, hit that thumbs up button, subscribe to this channel for more. Oh, and British lady, what do we always say here?
The following is a world-class Bullshitters exclusive.
Mark Hamill thought that Star Wars was a parody of Flash Gordon when he first read the script. The 73-year-old actor, who played Luke Skywalker in the original film A New Hope, admits that during his first read-through, he was convinced that creator George Lucas had written a spoof inspired by the 1950s TV series based on Flash Gordon's 1930 comic strip. Mark Hamill went to Harrison Ford, who played the space smuggler Han Solo, the pilot of the Millennium Falcon, in Star Wars, who had worked with Lucas before on American Graffiti, for some insight, but his co-star didn't offer a theory, so he then went to Lucas, who provided even less clarity on his vision. Discussing Star Wars in an interview on the UK TV show This Morning, Hamill said, "The thing is, I didn't get the whole script. For the first test, it was only 8 pages. I thought, who talks like this? So I spoke to Harrison, and you know what he said? Hey kid, let's just get it done." He was no help at all. I went to George, I said, "George, this is some sort of send up to Flash Gordon." He went, "Well, just do it and we'll talk about it later." Translation, let's just do it and never talk about it later. He's not a director who likes to talk about motivation and backstory. He casts people that are so close to what he wants, he doesn't have to direct us. I was wide-eyed and energetic and all these things. Hamill also didn't expect Luke to be the hero of the film, and was pleasantly surprised when he got the full script and realized Luke, who was originally called Luke Starkiller, was going to be the main protagonist. He added, "When I was filming, Harrison to me was the leading man. I just assumed that he was the lead character and I was his annoying sidekick. Then I get the movie and Harrison must be Luke. He's called Luke Starkiller at the time. Then I started reading and I was like, oh my god! It's from my point of view, which is really unusual to tell through a teenager." Hamill admits, he made Luke as juvenile as I could to give him some growth, but he was disappointed by the name change to Luke Skywalker because he felt his alter ego needed the more macho moniker. He said, "We shot the scene. I'm Luke Starkiller. I'm here to rescue you." I came back the next week and said, "Why are we doing this scene again?" They said, "Oh, they've changed your name." I said, "To what?" They said, "To Skywalker." Let's face it, Luke could use a little more machoing up. It sounded like Luke Flyswatter. I hated it. Well, Mark, sometimes change is good, though Starkiller is a bitchin' name. Thankfully, nobody ever used it afterwards. Depending on the version, Star Wars is my favorite movie. It's a film that always elicits an emotional response. It's exciting, it's memorable, it's a spectacle in space. It has everything I could want. But it wasn't always the version I love. And I'm not talking about the various special edition changes, I'm talking about the various versions of the script. Star Wars wasn't always Star Wars, it was rough. Just listen to Mark Hamill and you'll understand that clearly, but there's a little more to this story, and well, I'm world class, so of course I'm going to take you on that journey with me right now. As a writer myself, Star Wars taught me the power of revision and editing, because Star Wars started out like an inaccessible, confusing mess, just like Episode 1, but that's a topic for another time. The genesis of Star Wars began in the early 1970s as George Lucas, fresh off the success of American Graffiti, sought to craft an original space opera inspired by the pulp serials, mythology, and classic cinema of his youth. His first draft, completed way back in May of 1974, entitled The Star Wars, was a sprawling 132-page manuscript that bore little resemblance to the final film and bored everyone who read the script. This draft was introduced as a dense narrative centered on the planet Aquilai, where Luke, a grizzled veteran, protected Princess Leia from the Empire. The story included a plethora of characters such as Anakin Starkiller, his father Kain, and a host of Jedi Bendu warriors. Jedi Bendu warriors just doesn't sound too good. Beyond the Jedi Bendu warriors, there were complex political machinations and esoteric terminology like the Kyber Crystal and the Jedi Templar. According to Lucas himself in a 1999 interview, this draft was a huge, great, gigantic story that overwhelmed readers with its ambition and lack of focus. The sheer volume of characters, over a dozen major figures, and intricate subplots, such as a rebellion on the planet Yavin, rendered the script unwieldy and inaccessible. One of the most vocal critics of the early draft was John Milius, a fellow filmmaker, who described it as almost impossible to follow. You see, folks, this is why you should never get discouraged about creative process. Similarly, Lucas's then-wife, Marcia Lucas, an accomplished editor, remarked that the draft lacked emotional resonance with characters who felt flat and a narrative that was bogged down by expository dialogue. The 1974 draft's opening, for instance, featured a lengthy scene of political negotiations on Aquilai. That sounds familiar. Again, a topic for another video. The scene had minimal action and character development, which contrasted sharply with the final film's dynamic opening crawl and immediate boarding of the Tantive 4, Princess Leia's spaceship. Though the script was terrible, Lucas wouldn't be deterred. The evolution from its initial draft to the second, completed in January of 1975, marked a step towards clarity, but retained significant issues. Titled The Adventures of Starkiller, Episode 1, The Star Wars, which isn't any better, introduced a young Luke Starkiller, a farm boy, and shifted the setting to a more streamlined galactic conflict. However, it still suffered from the usual George Lucasisms, excessive complexity, or subplots that go nowhere. Screenwriter Willard Huck, who revised the script along with his wife, Gloria Katz, and they worked on Temple of Doom, so that's why I'm telling you their name, noted that the script was so overloaded with ideas and lacked a cohesive narrative thread. The character of Han Solo, for example, was a green-skinned alien with gills. This just goes to show you that change is good. The dialogue, too, was stilted, much more than we got in any other Star Wars film. Check this one out. I am but a simple knight, sworn to the Jedi Bendu. Now that sounds more medieval than Star Wars, but, we dodged a bullet, or a laser blast, or whatever the hell they shoot in Star Wars. The turning point came in the third draft in August of 1975, which began to resemble the final film. Here, Lucas simplified the mythology and consolidated the Force into a mystical energy field, rather than a physical artifact. Darth Vader emerged as the distinct villain, separate from the bureaucratic Imperial officers, and the Death Star became a central threat. Yet even this draft drew criticism for its pacing and character depth. When it came time to film the picture, things didn't get much better. Producer Gary Kurtz recalls that the production team struggled to translate Lucas's abstract ideas into a coherent shooting schedule. Lucas's insistence on the groundbreaking visual effects inspired by his vision of a used future aesthetic further complicated production, requiring ILM to innovate techniques like motion-controlled photography under tight deadlines. Now, normally at this point in the story, this is where things get better for our creatives, and we start to talk about how the film became the classic we all know and love. But before things can get better, they have to get worse. And well, this is Star Wars, and we all know about bad. The rough cut screened in March 1976 for Lucas's filmmaker peers included Brian De Palma and Steven Spielberg. They described the film as disjointed, with pacing issues and a lack of emotional weight. Years later, De Palma would call the film confusing and criticize the opening crawl as gobbledygook. The crawl, initially a dense exposition dump in 1974, was refined by the fourth draft into a concise summary of the Rebel-Empire conflict, with input from De Palma himself, who helped streamline its wording. De Palma also pointed to scenes in the cantina, which in the draft was overly long and cluttered with extraneous alien characters, diluting the focus on Han Solo's introduction. The changes from these drafts to the final screenplay were profound. The Death Star trench run, absent in the earliest drafts, was introduced in the third draft and refined through the storyboarding process to create the climactic tension that makes this film my absolute favorite. But the film wasn't clear yet. Marcia Lucas's editorial influence was critical in reshaping the narrative's emotional core. In the third draft, the death of Obi-Wan Kenobi was a brief, unceremonious event. Marcia insisted on extending the scene to emphasize Luke's grief, as noted in this J.W. Rinsler The Making of Star Wars book. The reason I bring up the book is we interviewed J.W. Rinsler here on the channel, and I believe it was one of his last, if not last, interview before he passed away. So check it out, I know you guys are going to like it. Similarly, the elimination of extraneous subplots like the 1975 draft's detour to planet Organa Major was driven by feedback from Steven Spielberg himself, who urged Lucas to focus on the core trio of characters, ensuring the narrative remained character-driven. This infamous screening also highlighted the need for pacing adjustments. The original cut included protracted scenes on Tatooine, such as an extended conversation with his friend Biggs. Feedback from this screening led Lucas to trim the scenes, preserving only essential moments to establish Luke's yearning for adventure. The final film's run of 121 minutes, compared to the third draft's projected 140-minute sprawl, reflects this disciplined editing, and once the score was added in, the rest fell into place. The creative journey of Star Wars underscores the necessity of iterative editing in transforming a raw, ambitious concept into a polished, resonant work. Editing also serves as a crucible for aligning creative intent with practical execution. Actors like Harrison Ford, frustrated by the stilted dialogue in early scripts, pushed for changes that transformed Han Solo from an alien oddity into the Han Solo we all know and love. There's a famous quote, "George, you can type this shit, but you can't say it." And well, Harrison Ford is always right. This type of editing goes beyond Star Wars. Films like Apocalypse Now and Blade Runner illustrate the critical importance of refining creative work to achieve clarity and impact as well. Francis Ford Coppola's 1979 Apocalypse Now began with John Milius's 1969 script, which was a dense, allegorical tale inspired by Heart of Darkness. Coppola rewrote the script multiple times, grappling with an unwieldy narrative that oscillated between surreal philosophy and a war epic. The production's chaotic shoot in the Philippines, coupled with feedback from the editor, led to a significant post-production edit to sharpen the focus on Captain Willard's psychological descent. These revisions transformed a potentially incoherent film into a haunting masterpiece, demonstrating that the continuous editing is essential to distill a creator's vision into a coherent narrative. Similarly, Blade Runner's evolution through multiple script drafts and edits underscore how persistent refinement can salvage a project's potential. The initial 1978 script, based on Philip K. Dick's novel, was criticized by director Ridley Scott for lacking emotional depth and narrative clarity. Early versions featured convoluted subplots and an ambiguous tone that confused test audiences, prompting Scott to revise the script, emphasizing Deckard's existential struggle and the human replicant dynamic. Post-production saw further changes, including a controversial addition of a voiceover and a happier ending to the film. Years later, in 1992, the director's cut would restore the darker version, but that's a topic for another time. It just goes to show you that this editing process, driven by feedback and reevaluation, ensured that Blade Runner evolved from a muddled sci-fi concept into a culturally significant film, highlighting that ongoing editing is crucial to align creative intent with audience accessibility and emotional resonance. Even the graphic novels I create go through the revision process. I write them, I rough out the pages, I add more pages if need be, I rework the panels for page symmetry, and when I get the final pages back in color, I give the dialogue one last pass to tighten things up. Or, mostly, add in more jokes that I thought of while drawing the book. I'll be sharing more of my creative process for Stealing Solo 2: The Force Awakens very soon, but I wanted to just give you a teaser here, to give you something to look forward to. The moral of this story is, editing is crucial. This whole video started with an interview from Mark Hamill talking about how bad Star Wars started out, but evolved into a creative writing TED Talk. The transformation from a chaotic 1974 draft to the streamlined 1977 film underscores the collaborative nature of filmmaking, where rigorous feedback and revision turned a problematic vision into a cultural milestone. Star Wars endures not because its early drafts were flawless, but because they were flawed enough to demand scrutiny and creativity that shaped the galaxy far, far away. Now, if only Disney put that much effort into the work, the world would be a better place. What do you think about this? What did you think of Mark Hamill's comments? Normally when you see Mark Hamill make a public comment, you got a lot of people out there rolling their eyes, calling him the devil, but I saw this and I thought to myself, this is a good jumping off point to talk about something bigger. So if you guys like these bigger concepts like I do, hit that thumbs up button and share this video all over social media. We're putting the world-class and world-class bullshitters, don't worry about the BS, we'll always call that out too. But these type of videos really resonate with me, the creative mind, and that's something I want to continue to do here on the channel, here in my life, as my work gets out there in the real world. So be on the lookout for Stealing Solo 2, it's a big book, I'm not going to put a huge commercial at the end of this, but if you really want something to read right now, the Stealing Solo 1 book is available at stealingsolo.com, and it's about a group of disgruntled Star Wars fans that kidnap Harrison Ford and force him to remake the movie in their basement. It was a big hit, and the sequel is going to be a bigger hit. But folks, we need you to make that happen. So until then, be smart, be safe, be cool, but always be excellent to each other.